Assalamu alaikum viewers and greetings to all my viewers. This is Shahbaz back here again with yet another lesson, and now this time in my business series. So without further ado, let us get down to its lecture. So to start the time with the name of Almighty Allah, who is the most beneficent and the most merciful. So as you can see on the screen, it is the third lecture finally of business series for you. And the last time we talked about in our lecture first, and what we talked about in lecture first and two, we were business definition of business communication along with its importance. So what I have for you today, let's find out. So today we are going to talk about the communication process. Now we need to understand this process first and foremost by knowing that it is once again a two-way traffic, like what we have already discussed in the importance of communication in our previous lecture number 2. So what actually is needed in the communication or inside the communication process? Primarily the two type of people. The first is the speaker, the second is the spoken to, or in other words they are called the sender as well as the receiver. So if those are the two participants involved, you can see them, then definitely there is a communication process taking place in between. So what else is required inside that communication process? Let's find out in our today's lecture. So multiple ways are there, multiple components are there in communication process, but what I have for you here are the most important ones, and let us start from the context. The context is most important because it is where you have the concept of speaking. Like being a sender or a speaker yourself, you can clearly understand what you actually have in mind first and first hand, so that you can convey that to the one who are listening to you and the one who are paying attention toward you. So in that case you need to have a concept, or for that you need to have a broad context in your mind regarding different aspects as you may perceive of. So with that done, obviously you become a good sender, or in other words you since you do the encoding, so you become an encoder in the other hand. And then and that is what you do the encoding, and you do that by sending or conveying the message from your side to the receiver. So the first is context. This is the concept that you gain, and the second is being a sender yourself, or in other words you become encoder. The third is what to encode. It is the message. That is what should be very informational, and such an engaging the type of message should be that it must engage the listener. What you say it should be responded back to you. So the message is the third element of this process, right after you become the sender and you start to send the message. The fourth of this, which is the channel, or in other words it is also called medium. Now like me being a teacher, I have multiple resources to deliver my message to my listeners, and in that case I do have multimedia to share my slides to the listeners and to my viewers. And this is what I'm right now doing here using the PowerPoint slides. So I have a medium right now as in shape of computer, but in other words I do have multimedia and many other things. Sometimes I neither have multimedia or the slides. I do have only say my whiteboard, and I go for it, and I have marker to write things down on them. So in that case you need to have a channel. What is the medium through which you can actually encode your message or communicate your message to the listeners or the viewers? So the first thing is, again I repeat, sender. I beg your pardon, context that allows the sender to start sending message, and that message must be delivered through a certain medium, or in other words channel. So there are four things that you can see, and the fifth of which is the receiver, the one who is listening, the one who is the decoder, the one who actually receives the message, interprets the message. And here's the thing, you need to make your communication effective, and it becomes effective only when your intended message gets delivered to the interpreted message in the mind of the receiver. So he must or she must understand the same thing that you are actually delivering to him or her. So they become receiver in the other hand, or on the other hand, and in other words, they are also called decoder. And last but not the least, it must be that good and that effective, the communication that you have or you would feel that you have made, that allows the listeners to generate feedback. And that is the most important thing. And that allows you to understand or believe that your communication process has been successful or your communication has been effective. So there are 6 things, as you can see. The first, to begin with, keeping in mind the context, what to speak, and then you become using those context, the context as being a sender. So you become sender and you do the sending of message, and you do that through a certain channel or medium. And last but not the least, you do that only for the listeners or receivers, or in other words, they are also called decoders. And these are the elements which only become successful once there comes feedback from the listeners. So through a chart we can see one last thing, that yes, the common way of sharing communication process is to have an encoding that is sending, as you can see on the screen, and that sending is done through a certain communication channel or medium, and that is to be decoding to the one who are listeners. So they listen things in such a way that they can or they should be able to generate noise, which is ultimately the feedback. So that's all for today, and we talk about another thing inshallah in our next lecture. Wait for that. Until next time, it is goodbye.